On April 7th, 2022, the Avalon Coast War officially ended with a peace treaty. The Avalon Kingdom, utterly defeated, ceded most of its coastal territory and critical resources to the Great Imperium. The aftermath of the Avalon Coast War devastated the mainland. It had been a bloody affair that every nation recognized as harmful to the development of the continent. Quietly, without formal treaties, every nation agreed. No war would again be fought on the mainland. At least, not for now. With the coast lost, Avalon's dreams of naval expansion were crushed. The once proud kingdom was now landlocked, and the Imperium, now stretching coast to coast, claimed the title of mainland hegemon. Even so, the war revealed critical lessons in military structure and strategy. The Great Imperium, despite victory, saw their soldiers as untrained and unfit for future conventional warfare. Irka Giga ordered sweeping reforms, transforming the Imperium forces from a disorganized militia into a professional army. Though the Imperium celebrated their dominance, the people of Avalon grew bitter. Resentment festered, their defeat never forgotten, and their hatred of the Imperium quietly passed down like tradition. The Avalon Kingdom learned as well. They realized that their superior equipment had allowed each Avalonian soldier to kill 5 Imperium soldiers for every loss. But the lack of backup supplies had doomed them. Arczyne ordered a complete overhaul of Avalon's logistics and training. No longer would a lack of gear decide their fate. The Western Coopage, too, recognized the new trend. They began forming their own army. Still untrained, still undisciplined, but eager to fight for their home. Though peace had been signed, the trauma of war left scars. All across the continent, one truth was silently understood. Another mainland war would be catastrophic for Imperiya. With the Avalon Coast War over, the mainland entered a period of reconstruction and introspection. Players flocked to the newly rebuilt cities, but this sudden influx made it clear. Traditional forms of government would no longer suffice to manage the rapidly growing lands and communities. Communism, democracy, monarchy, and even fascism all took root in various corners of Imperiya. However, these ideologies struggled to align with the server's evolving realities. Attempts to implement real-world ideologies one after another failed. Even as some nations clung to titles like socialist or communist, they became largely a mockery in the eyes of the international community who saw these experiments as naive. In the void of failure, Irka Giga sought a solution. Frustrated with inefficiency and disorder, he authored The System of Labor, a new governance philosophy emphasizing centralization, mass production, and a strong infrastructure foundation. His ideas would later evolve into what would be called laborism. Meanwhile, in Avalon, Arczyne solidified his position as a monarch. By streamlining decision-making, Avalon's leadership became direct and decisive, shifting the nation's focus to rebuilding its infrastructure and expanding its resource base. The Western Medicae, in contrast, rejected centralized control. Prioritizing personal freedom, they crafted a system where trade and agriculture flourished without the interference of a structured government. The Great Imperium, having gained new territory, also focused on its own growth. Military reforms were underway, but the scars of the war were still fresh, and the Imperium leadership knew that a new kind of governance was needed for a new age of power. As the nations around the Western Coopage thrived, the Coopage itself began to fall apart. Their refusal to modernize and adapt to new realities created an atmosphere of instability and dissatisfaction. Attempts at democratic reforms, such as elections and tax policies, only deepened the divisions within the Coopage. Citizens, once accustomed to a hands-off governance style, were now forced into the unfamiliar world of political responsibility, leading to confusion, and frustration. Meanwhile, the infrastructure of the western Coopage crumbled. Without a coordinated effort to maintain or expand their cities, their growth slowed to a halt. The government, stretched thin, proved incapable of addressing the mounting issues. The Coopage lack of a formal military structure became evident. With no strong defense or centralized leadership, the nation was left vulnerable. Meanwhile, neighboring powers like the Great Imperium continued to grow stronger. As the Great Imperium and Avalon turned their gaze beyond the mainland, a new chapter of exploration and expansion began. With the war's end, both nations started to establish navies, rudimentary at first, but enough to venture southward in search of new opportunities. However, this new land wasn't uncharted. The Western Medicae, a once small and unremarkable nation, had been the first to discover the southern continent. They had settled in the New World, establishing a village and staking their claim on the lands. But the discovery of the New World was not to be Medicae's alone. The Great Imperium and Avalon, both eager for expansion, set sail to claim the territory for themselves. The Medicae, seeing the inevitable, were quickly ousted. Both the Great Imperium and Avalon arrived with greater force, pushing the Medicae out of the New World entirely. Their claim was swiftly extinguished, and the land was divided between the two rising powers. In the coastal city of Irkutov, a tense negotiation took place. The two nations agreed to divide the New World between them. Avalon would control the eastern coastline, while the Great Imperium would claim the village and the lands to the west. The talks were not without disagreement. Arkzyne and Irka Giga, each with their own vision for the future, clashed over the details. But after hours of negotiation, an agreement was finally reached. The agreement marked a new era of cooperation, yet tension simmered beneath the surface. Both nations now had a stake in the future of the New World. The New World was now divided, but it was clear that both nations had only begun to explore its vast potential. The growing power, however, was about to attract unwanted attention from the rest of the mainland. While war may have ended on the mainland, the spirit of innovation and military might did not cease. The Great Imperium, ever focused on securing its power, began fortifying its borders and experimenting with new technologies, a warning to the West. The Great Imperium's efforts were met with defiance from Western Medicae. As the Imperium installed the first TNT cannon aimed at the capital of Medicae, the once peaceful nation now found itself on the brink of conflict. The TNT cannon, a fearsome weapon of destruction, marked a new era in warfare. The Imperium's military might grew, and it became a symbol of their determination to safeguard their newfound territories. Medicae, lacking the strength to oppose the Imperium's power, resorted to protest. They threatened war, but their lack of military strength left them unable to act on their words. Meanwhile, Avalon focused on technological advancements of their own. Arkzyne, ever the innovator, unveiled the first Redstone flying machine, a marvel of engineering that left Irka Giga in awe. Impressed by the potential of such a machine, Irka Giga ordered the immediate research and stockpiling of materials for future bombers. The Imperium's engineers set to work, determined to replicate Avalon's technological edge. Other nations took note of these technological breakthroughs, yet none had the resources or drive to replicate them. The Great Imperium and Avalon now stood at the forefront of military and technological progress. Though tensions between the Great Imperium and Avalon still simmered, their shared pursuit of innovation led to an uneasy partnership. Both nations knew that technological supremacy would shape the future of Imperiya. The age of innovation had begun. New technologies would change the balance of power, and soon, the entire mainland would feel the ripple effects. As the great Imperium and Avalon flourished, the western Coopage began to decay. Its once thriving cities now stood silent and abandoned. The promise of prosperity had vanished, and the once bustling trade routes had dried up. Feeling the weight of his nation's collapse, Pixelized Chicken walked into Igirgirga's court. His once proud nation had crumbled under the strain of outdated infrastructure and failed governance. The news of Western Coopage's fall sent shockwaves across the mainland. Pixelized Chicken's decision to offer his nation to the great Imperium stunned the leaders of the continent. Some saw the Imperium as saviors, bringing stability and resources to a land on the brink of collapse. But for others, the Imperium's arrival marked the end of their independence. Pixelized Chicken, once a symbol of resistance, now stood as a collaborator. Loyalists rose in rebellion, unwilling to accept Imperium rule. Streets that had once echoed with the sounds of life now rang with the clash of arms as Imperium soldiers swiftly suppressed the rebellion. The great Imperium swiftly moved to integrate the Western Coopage into their expanding empire. Cities were rebuilt, new roads laid, and the territory began to fall under the disciplined control of Imperium officers. Pixelized Chicken, now a trusted officer of the Imperium, rose through the ranks. No longer the leader of a broken nation, he became a symbol of Imperium strength, trained in their military camps and placed in positions of power. Under Irkagiga's rule, the Western Coopage was reborn. Yet, for many, the memory of its independence would never be erased. The price of survival was the loss of identity, and for some, the price was too high. Assimilation into the great Imperium was complete. The Western Coopage, now part of a greater empire, would never be the same. The first annexation of Imperiya history had succeeded, without the collapse that many feared. Yet peace, though achieved, was fragile. The great Imperium had succeeded where others failed, but not without scars. The age of imperial dominance had begun, but even as new territories were absorbed, tension simmered beneath the surface. For some, the cost of peace had been too great.